Goedemiddag, allemaal. Good afternoon. It's wonderful to see a bunch of familiar names and faces on the screen. And yes, you're welcome to open up your cameras. This is a meeting format today. Ons gaan 'n bietjie om 'n tafel gesit en gesels eerder as net na 'n skerm kyk. So welcome to this session. Always fun to have FinTalks, and it's not at three, it's for free. And today our guests are from CeeBee, the collection company, Simone Porter and Douglas, that's going to join us. So yeah, thank you for all of us popping in. I see a bunch of names that I recognize, a bunch of new names. And I'm going to share a little bit of story. My name is Rian van der Berg. I'm the deputy CEO at FEDSAS and also head of the Center for Finance and Risk Management. Some of our team members are with us today. I see Paul Renken popped in. Thanks for that. And Alreta is in the background doing the recording and making sure that everything runs well. En dan sien ek 'n paar van ons kollegas uit die kantoor uit. So baie lekker om julle saam met ons te hê. I want to start the session by just framing a few of the discussion points, and we've had several of these sessions over the past few weeks. In the past week, the school economy surfaced again in the media. Apart from the fact that schools are having their AGMs and budget meetings, there are serious budget cuts being talked about, and that affects our schools. So on the income side, we must do as much as possible to get as much money in as possible so that we can raise the level of quality education that we give at our schools. And in doing that, let me just quickly add a few comments here with a slideshow. I know you all love the fact that we can share some details here. We say that every cent counts. That's the motto or the slogan of the Center for Finance and Risk Management. So every cent counts means that we should definitely put on, I would say, high pressure, high alert into the fact that we've got to manage our finances at school. If every cent counts on the expense side, we must make sure that every cent counts on the income side and manage our school in that way. Just want to highlight our magazine, Rand Matters, Randsaak tydskrif. Our budget version edition is out about a month ago, and full of decent information from our service providers, and we address some of these real issues of budgeting, of collecting school fees, of determining school fees, and making sure all of that works. Maybe just a reminder, you can all open up your cameras, but be very wary. If your microphone is open, we will hear you. So be cognizant of that fact. Just this article last week, the English version will appear in our next Rand Matters magazine. So yeah, public schools facing financial difficulties and why parents should be involved, how we should collect money, and what's the stats behind our schools. Maybe today, just a brief session, opening session on the big picture. I just want to show you once again something that's crucial, and data and statistics mean a lot to me, but I think it should drive our decision making. Dit moet ons help om goeie bestuurders te wees. Maybe touch on SASA and Bella, maybe a short snippet. Want to reflect on exemptions and bad debts, and that's key to this discussion today. And then I've got a fundraising note to make as well later on in the event. The big picture, let the data show that we've got, I think it is about 25,000, close to 25,000 schools, including independent schools and Elson schools in the country. 22,511 public ordinary schools. So we've got the difference between fee-paying public schools and no-fee schools, and then the independent schools on the other side. And I want to venture well, maybe ask, who wants to guess how many fee-paying public schools there are left in the country? And I say left, that remain fee-paying out of this 22,511. And if you ventured a guess, you will know that the quintile 1, 2, and 3 schools should make up about 60% of the learners according to the norms and standards for school funding. Quintile 4 and 5 schools are about 3,682. Of that, and this is from the latest statistics data received from the Department of Basic Education, less than 3,000, 2,950 fee-paying public schools in the country. That's just about 13%, which to me says we've got to manage extremely well, extremely accurate, and make sure that we focus on the sustainability of our schools. If school fees run away, the school can't pay its obligations, parents can't afford school fees, or if the school fees are too low, we can't make our commitments, somehow we're losing the quality of education that is the obligation of the SGB to add, supplement. The access supplement to the funds provided by government to enhance quality of education. And I think that's why we're all here. School is not a money-making business. We're all here to enhance quality education for our schools. Maybe just a little bit of a background, the norms and standards for school funding. Not want to spend much time on that, but that's the allocation from the department. Quintile 4 and 5 schools. In some provinces, there's only an average of that being paid for all fee-paying schools. But there's, the no fee threshold tells you what the no fee schools get per annum per learner. So additional income for schools make a big difference. Maybe just a reflection on the macroeconomy. Don't want to touch too much on that, but we do see that the broader economy is under pressure. Schools are asking and talking about the increased percentage. It would seem that the school expense inflation is probably in the region of 7, 8, or even 9%. But it's not always possible to pass that 7 or 8% on to parents in the fee paying or the collection side of things. So we've got to balance these things. So the economy is under pressure. The local economy, school economy might be under pressure. And I think we're sitting with the shadow or the tail of COVID hitting us. And there's something to be said for what is unfair and unjust in the sense of collections, exemptions, bad debts. Some of us are paying and others are not paying. But we all know that school fees make a difference at school. So if money makes the world go round, then school fees make the school bell sound. Maybe just to reflect on Bella, there's a few changes in Bella. It's not proclaimed or proclamated yet. Bella is not in force, but to the Section 38 process of the budget meeting in future, once that is published, there will be a notice that includes the budget, not just notice of the budget meeting, as well as a document explaining the budget that needs to go out. So prepare for that and share the information. Democratize the information is my famous line to say, if we want parents to be involved, we must show them what they're involved in. And happy with it. Maybe just some quick exemption stats. And I spoke to Douglas. He might reflect on that as well, a little bit between the stats that they have. We've got some stats of exemptions earlier in the year. And this is where the concern lies. Ons is bekommerd, die tendens lyk anderste. Our concern is that exemptions are changing rapidly in some sectors. We did a survey, exemption survey. The schools that participated, 48% primary, 38% secondary. So the secondary is slightly higher than the proportion of the 1/3, 2/3 in the country schools. This is the average, not the average, but the spread of school fees. You can see 15% under 10,000, 27 odd percent in 10 to 15,000, 21%, 15 to 22. You can see the spread there. So there's a good mix of school fees, which tells us the diversity even within the fee-paying school cohort, and then about 20% of them over 30,000. This is where the concern lies. 63% of people surveyed said more than the same time last year. This was earlier in the year, so it was maybe March or so, and was already more. I think if we did it today, and maybe you can type in the chat box, you're welcome to chat with us whilst I talk and whilst Simone and Douglas talk. Chat with us, tell us what your trend is in exemptions. The number of applications might be more, but the value of applications, is that also more or not? Our budget booklet, what do you call it? Manual is available for our members on our website, and you can go find some benchmarking in there. But this is critical for primary schools. We see these are 4 bands of schools. This is not quintiles, but 4 bands of schools in lower income, lower or smaller size, the two mid-size, mid-income, and yeah, higher income, higher size. I think the first column is actually the higher income, bigger schools, and you can see how the exemptions differ in a smaller grouping with the averages changing. On average, it's 13%, but if you look at the smaller schools with lower fees, it's about 22%. Maybe tell us where you think your exemptions are this year in the chat box. The defaults or bad debts, you can see between 7 and 14% there. So a big portion, close to 20%, 22% of our school fees are bleeding away. Which makes collection critical, especially on the default side of things. But we should also manage our exemptions fairly well. Just the same stats for high schools or secondary schools, just for interest's sake, so that you know where you fit in. If you go look at the budget manual, you will find the size and the fee bracket for those schools. And you will see exemptions slightly higher and defaults more or less in the same percentage bracket. But that's close to 30% of school fees going astray. So to frame that, the fees are calculated and set by the AGM. Go and look at section 38. There's an obligation to pay. It's an investment in schooling. It's not a cost. And maybe that should be the message. There's an obligation to collect. The school must collect school fees. It's not a question, oh, well, if people can't pay, we don't set the child out. We do not disadvantage the child, but we must collect on behalf of the fact that all the other parents are paying, and that's the unfair, unjust. And then an obligation to report. Go read section 39, where it says at the AGM we should disclose the current trends of exemptions and non-payment for the past few years, so that we know when we set the budget, when we vote on the budget, that there are people. Don't put their names on the screen. I'm not saying disclose irresponsibly, but we must manage the trend and show the trend so that we know where that is going. I'm going to ask Simone and Douglas to open up their cameras and join me on stage. If there is a stage, we'll highlight them. Simone will kick it off. Simone is the MD of CeeBee, a trained attorney, and we met the other day at the SAOU WIFDA Symposium for the first time. And Douglas is the, not sure, is he the chairperson of the business? Simone, I think, will kick off, and then Douglas will take the presentation further. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for helping our schools. I'll check the chat. If there's any questions, feel free at any time to pop in a question in the chat room, or even raise your hand and participate in the discussion. Simone, over to you.
Thank you, Rian. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Simone Porter, Managing Director here at CeeBee. Today I'll be doing a presentation with our CEO, Douglas Break. Ons doen hierdie voorlegging in Afrikaans ook. Indien u enige vrae in Afrikaans het, is u welkom om vrae in Afrikaans te vra, maar ons gaan vandag se voorlegging in Engels doen. Net ons presentation opbring. Okay, so ons is CeeBee Debt Management. We are CeeBee Debt Management Services. Here's a picture taken a few years ago of all our employees. We've grown a lot since then. We are currently 140 employees at CeeBee. Sorry, just want to see.
Just click on the slide. Oh, you went to the end. Sometimes it freezes. So just reshare.
Let me just
reshare, and if it doesn't go on with the arrows, just click on the slide again. Sometimes if you click outside the border of the slide, it can't continue. Okay. There we go.
Again. Okay. We've been doing debt collection since 1999, and we assist, well, we've been doing debt collection since 1999, And we are doing 800 schools countrywide for 25 years. We've been assisting them with successful debt collections. Our main sales points are: we do legal at no cost to you. That includes everything up until and including default judgment. We cover all the costs, including sheriff fees. We have a month-to-month contract. If you're not happy with us, you give us a month's notice, and then we terminate the contract. No collections, no costs. If we don't collect, there's no cost to the school, and we have a national footprint. As mentioned, we do 800 schools countrywide. Some CeeBee news. We've been in business now for 25 years this year. We celebrated our 25th birthday in March 2024. We collect on average 15 million Rand per month, and we signed up over 70 schools in 2024. We bought our third premises to house our legal department, and you'll see there we've celebrated the day that we bought the third premises. And then I'm going to give over to Douglas.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everybody. Goeiemiddag. Sayabona. Just before I go through the slides and our collection processes, to tag on to Rian, with 800 schools, we're able to see and feel the pulse of what's happening out there, and we see it upon the different segments. So there's the private schooling, which there's the traditional private schools. We do some schools with 400,000 Rand a year school fees, 40,000 Rand a month for those worrying about their budgets. But we also do inner city schools, where school fees are as low as 7,000-8,000 Rand a year. We see a difference between the English and the Afrikaans schools of what's happening out there. The upper English schools, I'm talking the government schools, so to speak, some of their school fees are hitting 70,000 Rand, between 50 and 70,000 Rand a year, which puts them squarely into the private school fees. So we do see that there's been a movement back across, going back to private schools. There are smaller private schools. Every second church seems to be opening something these days, and they're quite cheap. Their level of education, debatable at times, but we do see a variance there. I do see the economy lifting over the last month. We had one of our worst collection months in June when there's elections, because the parents hold on to their money. Maybe they're buying baked beans and candles again, or they're worried about who's going to come into power. That lifted after the June-July holidays, which was a double whammy. So some of the things, we're seeing some people with a two-pot retirement system doing settlements with us. So we've had an upswing in settlements where people are cashing in their future to pay the school fees of the past. Interest rate drop, it's only coming into effect 1 November, but that's, interest rates rises and drops sort of go cyclical over years. So we're hopefully going to have a 5-6 year drop, but that can change overnight. The political government of national unity gives stability to business. People in business just want stability. As long as we know what the rules are to work to, we can work towards them. And we are seeing, and we're seeing some people coming back to the country that have immigrated. Things aren't good in Europe, aren't good in Australia. Weather's horrible, people are horrible, and they don't know how to play rugby, I guess. We are seeing a little bit of lift. One of the interesting ones is when architects start getting busy, the economy's lifting. So the architects are drawing, then the builders start building. And once the building business is busy, then the economy in general lifts. So I'm not pessimistic. I'm seeing an upswing now. But the government of national unity is very fragile at best, as we can see. Politicians in general aren't I'll be careful what I say, but that can fall over. And in South Africa, that has a big effect on the economy. So if our politics go south, so does the economy. Okay, on collections for schools, and Rian did ask me to share best practice on when to hand over. A little thing I do separately, but I'll mention some of the points now. On schools that collect well, and I have some inner city schools that have transformed, that, you know, one would automatically say, wow, they're going down a bad road, that are holding it together and doing it well. There's a culture of payment, and that comes from the school management team, principal, if you have a strong principal driving, strong bursar, and a supportive governing body. I'll say this on governing bodies, and I hope I don't step on toes. We see in general the Afrikaans schools have strong governing bodies because they are protecting their language. They take care within the school. We see, unfortunately, in some of the English schools, non-existent governing bodies or political governing bodies that are perhaps working against the principal and not there for the best. So that has a big bearing on your collection and your finances. If the parents see the money's being wisely spent and they see value, they stay at the school and they pay their school fees. But internally with the schools, having a strong finance policy and a strong collection policy is important. If you hold on to your debt for too long, golden rule in debt collecting, the younger the debt, the easier it is to collect. If you go past this year into next year, you've created a culture of non-payment. Those parents are still not paying. They haven't felt the pain of listings, of summonses, of judgments. So it's an important thing to handle.
Douglas, yes. I've got to interrupt you. You've got to say that is a tagline that we need to use. The younger the debt,
the easier to collect.
The easier to collect.
The older
when is the soonest? When is the soonest that we can use debt collectors or handing over? Because you mentioned that once it's past that year, just timeline it for us in your best practice as well as maybe your stats, because there's a debate: is it old debt and can we still collect when it? I think the debate should be around 3 months, not about 3 years, and maybe just give us that the younger the debt, the easier to collect.
Correct. Okay, so. Private schools are different. They don't have to fall under all the Section 41s and the 90-day letters, etc. I'm thanking those people that are doing good comments on the bottom of the screen. Thank you, Colleen, and Elise, very much appreciated. Okay, so best practice. I chaired a governing body for 6 years, Boksburg High, many years ago when my children were there. So I've been on your side of the table, I guess, for the schools. So best practice is you do your exemption processing in the first term. I know exemptions a parent can apply any time in the year, but it also says that the parent, if they're not able to pay, must apply. So straight away at the beginning of the year, tackle it head on and say, in most schools, 28th of Feb, deadline to get your application in. Then there should be a quick way of processing. If you've got a good governing body, they should be involved. In the month of March, process your exemptions. CeeBee can assist you. If you are a client, we do full traces at no cost, and we'll give them to you. Also, if you are a client, we have a product where we'll process your exemptions for you, and we charge per exemption on that. But come April, once the school holidays are finished, you know who's paying and who's not paying, and you know who's applied for exemption. You've processed your exemptions, and you have those that do not qualify, you've told them. So in April, do your Section 41 letter, final demand letter to the parents. Remember, it has to either be signed for by the parent or you must send it by registered post. Post office is not lacquer these days, so you can send it by registered email, and there are various companies that do it. Cost, I think, is about 28, 29 Rand per letter. You're giving them 90 days. That gives you May, June, July. At the end of the July holidays, those that engage with you, make promises, come in, sign acknowledgement of debt, do a debit order, undertake, keep them, don't hand them over. You are working them, and first prize is you get them to pay, you don't have to hand them over, you don't have to pay commission. Those that ignore you and didn't apply for exemption, what else are you going to do? What more can you do? This is the time to hand them over. So the schools that we do very well, and we collect as much as 65 to 70% of their handed over debt, are handing over like this. They do 2 handovers a year. So those that don't engage with the school, they hand over in August. we're able to get them credit listed by the end of August, beginning of September. And in some cases, in December, we can be serving summonses. Those that engage with you, engage your internal staff, your debtors people should work them. But once December's come and gone and they did not honor, you know, you've got a new year. Focus on your new year. Always focus on your new entrants, your grade R's and 1s and your grade 8s in the high school. If you rectify them and you hand them over as soon as possible, we need to, I'm reading questions as I go. I'll come to them just now. I'm going to stop watching those. Is then in January they do a secondary handover and then start the new year clean. Okay. There's a lot of things around prescription, and we differ with FEDSAS. Whereas one school of thought is debt only prescribes in 30 years. What we do is at 3 years, and the courts have put a lot of pressure if you try and go with a case that's older than 3 years. So there's variances, and all the clever attorneys will tell you you can do this in court and you can do that in court, but that costs money and it takes time. And sometimes you're only a year or 18 months later in court. Meanwhile, parents not paying, he's telling his pals he's not paying, culture of non-payment. So going back, the quicker you hand over, the quicker we can collect. Okay. So the question that comes through, does school fee debt prescribe? Can I go in, can I open this Pandora's box? Rian? Is this the format, or should I say?
Let me just open it. I think let's deal with your slides, and we'll deal with the questions afterwards. There are a couple of good questions that came in, and once again, I think we're going to have two different opinions about that, or various different opinions depending on how many lawyers are in a room at the same time. For me, the debate should not be let's get to 3 years and then talk about subscribe. I want to get to the 3-month period. Let's get it in the same year. You know, so let's move far away from the line of where does it prescribe? FEDSAS legal opinion is that it does not. It's a statutory payment. It's like tax. It does not it does not lapse. But it's a difficult process in the court cases. From a practical financial point of view, I think let's not even be at that line. Why do we get to more than a year? Why do we get to more than 2 years?
Are you going to hand over at 29 years? You'll be retired by then.
No, exactly. So manage it beforehand. There's a few other questions, acknowledgement of debt and end date for exemption. I like the questions, but I'm going to allow you to quickly just showcase your slides and we'll get to them. Yeah.
This is the sales and marketing. This is what we do, and then I'll more than happy with questions. Okay. So we do a month-to-month contract. So you sign with us. It's a memorandum of agreement. It's an indefinite one, subject to 1 calendar's month notice. So we differ from our competition in as much as we don't tie you to a long-term contract. If you're unhappy, give me a month's notice. I'll give you everything back at the end of that month. We have no withdrawal fee, no file closing fee, no penalty fee, no penalty commission. We still have our very first client. We do lose some clients. Most of them come back. Not all of them come back. Okay. If we don't collect, there's absolutely no cost whatsoever. Okay. And we carry all the costs, and I'll go through. So we do the credit listing costs. What differs us from our competition again is we list with 4 different credit bureau. We do not list in your school's name. We list under CeeBee's name. Remember, this is a soft listing. It is effective to a point. Probably about 10% of collections go around the credit listing. So it will simply say Mr. Smith was handed over to CeeBee for non-payment of school fees. You're an adverse payer. The reason we do that is, if you wrongfully list, you get sued. I carry insurance for that. You don't want to be a school being sued because Mr. Smith, of which there's a lot of them. We also do, once we've listed the 4 of them, sorry, the other one is if they want to fight, they fight with us. They don't come to the school and want to box the principal because the big bodybuilder can't buy his big screen TV on credit. Okay, so we have an internal tracing department, which we look at a lot of different tracing portals. So we're going there. I'll need to go back just now to the legal. Go forward. Thanks, Simone. Appreciate it. So on it, we're looking to register. When I say Home Affairs register of marriages, We do a CIPRA check, deeds office search. We also do an affordability test. So we use the same databases the banks use. The affordability, it actually gives us an earnings estimator. Not 100% accurate, but it works pretty well also on your exemptions. So if we are doing your collections, we give you access to that as well. So we then hand over to a collector. We do not run a call center. We have individual collectors allocated to specific schools. Reason for this, there's accountability. Also, the collector is commission driven. So when she or he gets up in the morning, they're as keen as you are to see the money come in. So we run on a basis that they double their salary if they hit their target, and it's open-ended. So some of my top collectors are earning in the region of 25 to 30,000 Rand a month, but they're collecting for their schools 700 to R1 million in that month. We work in teams of 5 with the team leader, and there's client services managers as well, which are senior. They used to be team leaders themselves. Because we've grown and we're so big, when we started years ago and we were 40 schools, we had one director overseeing them. We now have 8 client service managers countrywide, one based in the Cape, one based in KZN, and the rest based up in Gauteng. In each team, we try and cover all the regional languages, because then we can talk to the parent in their home language, we find is very important. Okay, so the collector has a 3-month window to collect. In it, we're also doing the credit listing. We have various tricks of trade. We don't do anything illegal, but we do a lot of training. We have our own training manager and training center, and we train our collectors on collection tactics. At the end of those 3 months, if they're not successful, our legal department gets involved. So in the collection environment, you have collection companies, and we are a collection companies, and you have attorneys. Collection companies tend to do the soft collections. They'll do tracing, credit listing, and nagging, and it sort of stops there. So they have some success. Attorneys tend to go straight in for the jugular, and they go summons judgment. We find that sometimes if you go to judgment too fast, people give up. The debtor gives up and says, well, you've got me for the next 30 years. I'll make a plan not to pay. So the process of transitioning from soft collections into the legal, our collectors are taught the psychology of it, of educating the parent of the process. We get a lot of payment in that process up to an issuing of summonses. So we tend with schools to be very successful. Our judgment that we go to judgment is relatively low, but we issue a lot of summonses. Remember, as Simone said, we cover the cost of that. We issue the summons. So we have a whole building with our attorneys and legal people in. We then have corresponding attorneys right around the country, which we pay fixed monthly fees. I've got economy of scale because we're so big. We're issuing so many summonses. So we draw them up. It goes through the attorneys. They sign, submit, comes back through to us. We pay the sheriff fees. We do not add it to the debt for the parent to pay. We do not charge the school. I emphasize that because we're the only people doing that I know. There might be somebody out there that's copying us now. So the school does not pay 1 cent towards legal. We do not add the cost to the debt for the debtor to pay. And I want to hone in on that for a minute. You know, parents are part of the community. Governing body represents the parents. If you are now loading that debt with a whole lot of legal fees, and often what happens when the parent starts paying, the attorney takes their cost first. So the school stands at the back of the line, is not getting the money, and the parents, you're nailing them. You're taking them past a point. You know, they're battling already. They haven't paid their school fees, and now you're making it bigger and bigger and bigger. It does make it unattainable for them to settle. Okay. Where do we go? More interest. Go to the next slide, please, Simone. So I've shown you the listing summons judgments. We do it at our cost. If there's no payment, you don't pay a cent. So now comes in commission, okay? And we have competition that are cheaper than us. I'm going to tell you they charge less commission, but they charge you for the legal, or they don't do the legal, or they charge the parent extra for the legal. So we charge 25% of the capital that is collected. So if you give me 1,000 rand and I collect 100 rand, I'm charging you 25 rand. If that's all we collected, that's all you paid was 25 rand. If I collected the full 1,000, 250 rand. What we do, it sounds like a Frank Sinatra song, what we do, we add more interest to the debt. So let's just discuss what more interest is. It's in the Magistrates Act, and basically it says in the Magistrates Act, this is the prescribed interest that you can charge if there's no credit agreement in place. So school fees are not credit agreement, there's no credit agreement in place. We have to place the parent under MORA. So MORA is used by attorneys and it's used in other legal fields. We place the debtor under MORA, and that's only done at time of handover. So we have to, for credit listing, also give them 21 days notice. So when you hand over, they get a letter, we send it registered, we send it email, we get it whichever way we can to them. And we tell them, hey, if you don't pay in 21 days, we're listing you, and we now place you under MORA interest. So MORA interest is I'm English, but I do this so often in Afrikaans, gekoppel aan primêre koers. Okay, so it's linked to prime rate, which has now been dropped to 11.5, but the MORA interest is currently 11.75 till the 1st of November. Then it will go down to 11.5. So in a clean case, I'm giving you an example. If that debtor doesn't pay for a year, and we've now got a year's worth of interest, and we now get them to pay, they are going to say now it's 1,000 rand debt. We've now added 117 rand 50 in interest. He now pays 1,117 rand 50. We do not deduct our money. We send everything to the school. So if you remember the old T accounts, and you my age, we used to do T accounts on blackboards with chalk, if you remember. Your debt's 1,000 rand, you've received 1,117. Take the 1,000, you put it against the T account, his account's closed. The 117 rand 50, you either put in your interest received, or some schools put into their legal fees as a credit. Okay, now in that case, the effective cost to the school is only 13.25. You've paid us 25% commission. There's been a clawback of 11.75. Okay. Overall, it averages closer to 17%. And I'll tell you why, is that if those pay quickly, there's less interest. We also, with your blessing, use interest as a tool to do settlements. So we can write off interest if they settle the capital by a certain date. So on average, our schools, 16, 17% is the net cost to the school. And you're not throwing good money after bad. You're only paying it if we collect. Now, the reason I don't deduct our fees, so attorneys will often deduct their fees, and they will send you 712 rand, and because they've got their costs on there. With us, we send everything to you. It gives you a very good audit trail. Because now I've sent you that 1,117 rand 50, and we send it to you, and we send an invoice. You can see the 1,000 goes to Mr. Smith's account, and here's your 117, and then from your legal fees account, you've paid us 250. Okay, that's the quick version. Simone, do you want to go into the last slide? I'm a married man. I'm not used to talking so much, so I have to drink water from time to time.
Dangerous.
Okay, we do monthly reports to you. They're very detailed by data. There's legal reports. There's reports splitting the capital and interest. There's by data what's happening. We also have a portal. It's not on the notes, but if you sign up with us, we give you a portal with a password. You can dial in and see the accounts live as we work in them. So we're very transparent. Our additional ones, we assist with exemptions. We do traces, no cost if we do your collections. The parent must give permission for us to do it. You build it into your exemption application form. We can process your exemptions for you at a fee. You know, schools that are well constituted, it's better you do it yourself. But there are some schools that just don't have the capacity. There's one lady she's got a job description with 180 things on. So we can do that for you. And we can process your Section 141 letters. But I just want to make a mention of that. There are service providers that say, don't worry about doing a Section 41 letters. We'll do them for you. So the school hands over, yeah, and then that collection agency does the Section 41 letter. And these low-hanging fruit, people, Section 41 letters do produce payments. Okay, so don't give that to an outside entity. So we can do it for you. All we charge you is the registered email fee, but you still hold the debt. So we'll process it for you. You hold it for 90 days. If they pay you, happy days, you don't hand over, no commission. If they don't pay, then hand them over. So that is what we do. We have a department. Okay, I'm saying thank you. I'm going to put the slide of our staff up, and then I'm open for questions, Rian. And I'll see you.
We're gonna chase quite a bit of questions, so people can get it. I'll share that later on again, and this deck will be shared with everyone as well as the recording. Yeah, we can quickly jump into the questions, and I think it relates. There's a few themes here. The one is exemptions. And I think that is critical to quickly step into. Exemptions is not only a legal process, and it's not just tipped towards the exemption goal of not paying. My interpretation and my advice will be have a deadline for exemptions, as Douglas said, the February deadline. We know that if someone's financial position changes and they come to you later on in the year, we're not going to say, sorry, we are now overruling the law, but have a practical process. You need to have that timeline to work with. If someone is not paying by the end of February, you know there's a red light. There's a little bit of a red flag already. But similarly, if you've given exemption, early in the year, the regulation stipulates clearly that if the SGB becomes aware of a material or a significant change in the financial position of the exempted parent, that can also be taken under review again. And that exemption can be reviewed and said, hey, you said you have no income early in the year, but now it looks completely different. And this is where the question comes in. How would we know that the financial position changed significantly? So one's got to be in contact with your exempted parents during the year to see what is happening. So exemption is a big one. So yeah, can a school indicate? I think yes, but we know that a parent might also apply in November, and we will have to process that. But from a practical point of view, do that. There was another one exemption. What happens, Douglas and Simone, what happens when the family changes? Not sure what that means. And exemptions are closed. Can a parent apply for exemptions after the second term? I think I've addressed it. But I don't know if you want to make a comment on that.
Yeah, if I can, just another thing, by processing, having a deadline and processing, your internal collectors, if it's not processed fast, they can't phone that parent. Every time they phone the parent, I just saw one question flash up. What happens if it's only the third term and they haven't been told? For those 3 terms, you cannot phone them and say, pay your school fees. They're going to say, I'm waiting for my exemption feedback. So by closing them and getting them sorted, yes, the Act says if I lose my job in August, I can come into the school and then apply for exemption. Remember, it's only from August is the exemption. It's not backdated then. Okay.
Yeah.
If I lost my job in August. Yeah.
Agreed. Okay, so the exemption one, I think we should possibly have one. Maybe my feedback on that. We are in deep discussions with the Department of Education to review the exemption formula, not just the process, but the formula, because the formula has a target of 0. And that dipping line, if school fees increase, the parent with the same income last year now gets more exemption, but they did not impoverish at all. It's just the school fees relative changed. So we're and hoping for big discussions there. I want to quickly run through the second one was a few comments on the 90-day letter, the acknowledgement of debt. Acknowledgement of debt vis-a-vis the Section 41 process. You don't necessarily need an acknowledgement of debt if you're a parent. If you're a parent at a school that pays fees and the school fees were determined by the AGM, you have an obligation. You've got debt.
Yeah,
Douglas?
So comment on that. We go to court a lot and we fight these cases a lot. So historically, acknowledgement of debt, if I'd signed the acknowledgement of debt and don't pay, one can go straight to judgment. Okay, that's historic because I acknowledged it. So the whole need of summonses has been bypassed. The courts don't accept that specifically with school fees. They've been educated by the department. So they know about your Annexure A's, they know about the Section 41 letters. And they would simply say, and this is also touching on the issue of prescription, is the courts have said to us, why are you coming here with this 4 years later? What have you done for the last 3 years? You've known they haven't paid for 3 years. Why did you not summons them? So the acknowledgement of debt, it helps a little in the court case, but not a lot. But there are those parents that are old school when they've signed that acknowledgement of debt. It is a good internal debt collecting process because you can hold the parent to that morally to say you signed, you promised what's happening. And it still has an effect in your internal collections, and even in our soft collections, we still utilize it.
Maybe just as a last comment on the acknowledgement of debt, because it's part of that question, may the school withhold any learner reports until such time as parent made or no. The parent is obliged to pay. The parent is the debtor, but we cannot disadvantage the learner in any way, withholding reports, withholding them from school activities. That is the difficult thing. That's why the process must be a partnership between the parents and the school. It's not, parents are not consumers at school. Parents don't buy or pay for a product. They are part of the school because it's a public school, and I think that's where the obligation to pay or the community school, the public school nature must be explained far more. I see someone is scratching on our page there. Someone is trying out a lot of tools in Zoom. I just wanted to quickly touch on another question. The prescription debate, I think, diverts us from, is it 3 years or is it 30 years? There's an obligation to pay.
Yeah.
And the sooner we do that, the sooner we start that 90-day process, the earlier you start collecting, the earlier you hand over, the better it is to collect. I just wanted to see what the question was that I wanted to jump into.
Can I say my 50 cents on prescription? Yeah. Okay, so the 30 years applies to taxes. School fees are not a tax. So taxes, your rates and taxes is a tax. And obviously anything with SARS stays alive for 30 years. So school fees are not, so they are gazetted that schools can charge school fees. So normally your 30 years applies to those that are statutory. Okay. So the argument on school fees being statutory is no amount is published to say this is what the school fees are. It's not published or gazetted anyway. The parents vote on it, and it varies hugely, as we know, between the different schools. The other school of thought, and we've had this from a magistrate in Pretoria, is that the parents do have relief via exemptions. So there is a relief that's there, that's not there with your rates and taxes and your taxes. So we've had cases where you can go in and you can argue, and Simone can maybe come in on this. So we can go to court on it, but now you're putting an attorney in court and you're going to spend 10 to 30,000 rand for the pleasure of that to argue the prescription. And there are some unique areas where you can overcome the 3 year, not on the 30-year basis, but you can overcome the 3 year prescription. It's costly, it's time consuming. It's not something we will cover the cost because you're throwing a lot of money into something that some magistrates just won't give you. So that's my argument and what we advise our people.
And once again, we can debate far and wide. My benefit must be to the school, and the school will not win in the 3-year, 30-year debate. I think the school can win if we start with a handover or a management process of debtors earlier and stronger, and be strong in that side of the debate rather than opening the door. Let's let everything wait until then. So let's hang that one out there. I quickly wanted to check something that triggered a thought in my mind, and maybe this is where we've got to explain something. There's a practical process of handover and a legal process of handover, and there's a practical process of write-off, or call it an accounting process of write-off, but not writing it off because you're giving it to a debt collector. And I think sometimes we trip over the terminology. If you hand over debt, it doesn't mean that it's been processed and there's judgment and summons. If you write off debt for an accounting purpose because the auditor said it's no longer reliably recoverable, it doesn't mean it's just zero. You can still give that to a collection agency like you. Maybe just comment on that so that we don't trip over the wording of handover. Doesn't necessarily mean we have no more case to work it, and now it's suddenly telling someone your debt's handed over doesn't mean that there's already judgment and already costs and already summons to that.
Perfect. So just on another point, if you do my example of handing the full year over and doing your Section 41 in April, you have an acceleration clause in your school fee agreement. So the acceleration clause is quite simplistic. You'll say your school fees are 10,000 for the year. If you pay full in front, you get some discount, or you pay 1,000 Rand a month over 10 months. The acceleration clause you put in, it says if you miss any payment, then the full year becomes due and payable immediately. Okay, so now you're defining the year school fees in April in your final demand letter, not just the first term. If you try and do it term by term, it's a nightmare. You're going to be doing lots of letters, etc. So you raise a very good question. And we almost see half the schools keep the debt alive on the debtor's account, and the other half, based on the correct accounting process, and don't use the word write-off. A parent here, it's write-off. They go, hey, I don't have to pay that. It's written.
Yeah.
It's moved to a bad debt. It's been handed over and moved to bad debts. Don't use written off. So everybody says, it's afgeskryf. Oh, just the parent loves that, okay? So your auditors and your chartered accountants will tell you that is correct. When you hand over at the end of the year, you move that to bad debts. Not written off, it's bad debts handed over account. Okay. Now, the problem with the parents is they get a statement of, oh, lekker, and there's just this year's school fees. I don't see last year's school fees. So that is why a lot of schools, and it's almost 50-50, Rian, about half of our schools will actually keep it live. The downside of it is you have, now there's 4 brothers and they haven't paid for 10 years and you're sitting in 300,000-400,000 plus in the account. It makes your book a nightmare to try and manage because you've got these huge totals. So the write-off is, and also the allocation of payments is so important here. So if you've put it to a bad debt account, it's been handed over and it's been moved to bad debts, and now the parent comes in and says, here's 1,000 Rand I'm paying for this year. Your problem is, and I'm going to raise prescription, the ways to stop prescription is a payment, because your date goes from date of last payment or date of summons, or if neither of those are in place, to date of debt. So your auditors will tell you, you should always apply any payment to oldest debt first. It's generally accepted accounting practice. There's that new, it's the new terminology. It is also in there. And then your write-off. So what we do is each year, at the end of the year, we will do a list to our schools to say we cannot collect on this. Okay. And this can be dad's dead, mom's unemployed, got 5 judgments, or they've disappeared out the country, they've emigrated. However, we're also saying if it's prescribed. So it's gone past that window. The problem being also is to get judgments. The magistrates are looking for 5 documents, and not all schools can supply us those 5 documents. And we need originals. Can I run through them quickly?
Yeah, okay. We've got about a minute or so, then we need to wrap up. So yeah, but it's very valuable. Give us those 5 documents.
When CeeBee goes now to go and apply for the judgment in court, just keep in mind, the magistrate's done a divorce case, a drunk driver case, a theft case. Here comes CeeBee representing the school. So they want to see an enrollment form to show that the child was enrolled in the school. That everybody's got. They want a full statement to see what's owing. That we've got detailed statement of the years. Then they want to see the resolution from the AGM where the parents voted on those school fees. okay, which is very valuable, that we have. Then they want to see proof that the Section 41 letter was sent. They don't want to see the letter.
Mm-hmm.
They want to see either where the parent has signed it or your registered email slip or your registered post slip. And then they want to see your Annexure A from exemptions. That's the yes/no form. Has the principal told you about exemptions? Do you want to apply? Do you need help to apply for that? Now, a lot of schools only give those out to people who apply for exemption. That's wrong. Those aren't the people that you take into court for a judgment. The Act says that on enrollment, the principal must have the parent sign. Principal and parent must both sign it. On enrollment, so everybody when they get enrolled, you only have to do it once. So we can go in with this form that's 10 years old that they signed for OBUT. And we can go in because the magistrate wants to see that the parent was aware of their rights. So if I've got those 5, I can get judgments. We can collect 65 to 70% of your debt.
Sure. Once again, that is a legal process that ends with possibly judgment, but not necessarily with payment.
Yeah, and look, there is further legal to go, but we don't do it at our cost. Section 65's garnishes, they're expensive. Very few schools do that.
Yeah. I don't know what's going on the screen. Simone, if you can possibly stop sharing. I just wanted to close this session. Douglas, Simone, thanks very much. Douglas, very informative. The big question is, how do we get the money? Not necessarily the judgment. But yes, we must follow the judgment route. So we've got to do our homework in the beginning. Start with the end in mind. So at enrollment, at contracting, call it contracting, at enrollment, let the parents sign for all these things and make them aware, and then manage a lot of those processes. I want to thank you for your input. There's a bunch of questions. I think we've dealt with the themes of the questions, if not with all. And please contact me, contact CeeBee with any questions, or contact your FEDSAS provincial manager in this regard. The center can be very helpful, or we will stand in and try and chase all these rabbits. I want to just end with a quick thing. Since we're talking funding in schools, and I know most of our schools have heard this, but there's an obligation to add funding to the school school fund. And fundraising is a critical thing that most schools do in order to compensate for the loss in bad debt and the loss in exemptions. And we've got something that we've been punting for quite a while now. It's like baking pancakes 24/7. People buy data, they consume data, I say, while they sleep. I get WhatsApps and SMSs. My apps update, I get emails, whatever. While we sleep, people in this country are chowing data. And the school can sell SIM card through the SIM for Schools program and get a commission on all future top-ups. Not a lot of our schools are engaging in this. And yes, it does take a little bit of effort, but possibly a lot less effort than doing registered mail and 41s and all these things. But if everyone sees that there's money coming in, there's fundraising in the school, and there's benefit, the cost value proposition at the school might just change, and everyone might feel part of a growing scenario. I want to end just by flashing the contact details for Cindy, one of the sales and marketing people at CeeBee. If you want to call, email, or contact them, feel free. I'm going to stop sharing and just say thanks to our panel today. Douglas, lovely hearing from you, and thank you for the support to our schools. And there's been a few good reviews in the chat box from current clients. I'm assuming, Simone, thank you for hosting or sharing with us, and we'll take this further. We'll share all the details. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a wonderful, Tuesday? No, I think it's Wednesday. Have a wonderful Wednesday, and I hope to see you soon. Last word from you, just a quick goodbye, Douglas and Simone.
Guys, thank you so much. We've really enjoyed it. We're available for other sessions. I won't always sell CeeBee. I'm passionate about what we do. I'm always available to assist.
I see there's 2 hands up, maybe just 30 seconds for each, then we'll close the session. I see some people have already stepped out. Rione and Nicola, I don't know if you want to type or quickly open your mics.
Hi there, it's Rione from Collegiate.
Rione, yes.
Hi. I just wanted to clarify the prescription period. I was told in writing by FEDSAS that the prescription period is 3 years. I have that in writing on an email.
Okay. Rioni, will you
So
contact
that's very confusing.
Okay, I hear you. I hear you.
Yeah.
I don't know when that was sent, and I don't know by who. But please contact me from Collegiate. My
Okay.
email address is rian@fedsas.org.za,
Thank you.
and
I
please
do have. Okay.
forward me that. Yeah, so that we can have it. Once
Thank
again,
you.
my comment is we don't need to be on the debate of is it a 3 years. We've got to get the money before then, or have gone to judgment and hand over before then. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
that. Another hand, but otherwise I'm going to close this session. Simone, laaste woord van jou. Sê net dankie en bye. Daar's hy. Lekker om jou te sien.
Ja, baie dankie. As daar enige ander vrae is, julle is welkom om 'n e-mail te stuur na Cindy toe. En soos Douglas gesê het, ons baie passionate om ons skole te help. So as julle vrae het wat julle beantwoord wil word, is ons meer as welkom om julle te help.
Baie dankie. Have a
Awesome.
great Wednesday and best for the rest of the week. I'm sitting in George and the wind is pumping, so I don't know where you are sitting. Stay safe if the weather turns bad. Take care, guys. Thanks so much. Go well.
Dankie, bye.
Bye, everybody.